And welcome once again to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. Joining me, Juan Zarate. He's our national security analyst. Juan, once again, good to see you.
Bob, always great to see you.
Abu Hamza. Who is this guy and why should we watch him?
Abu Hamza al-Masri is one of the principal ideologues out of London who's radicalized a number of violent Islamic extremists, to include Richard Reed, the shoe bomber. Keep in mind the U.S. has wanted Abu Hamza to face trial for over a decade. The U.S. tried mightily to have him extradited from the United Kingdom and held accountable for terrorism charges, trying to set up a training camp in Bly, Oregon, facilitating movements of recruits into Afghanistan, even facilitating a kidnapping operation in Yemen in the late 90s. And so he is now facing trial at long last in 2014 after being indicted in the U.S. in 2004. And what's interesting to me, Bob, and we've talked about this, it's the second significant trial of an al-Qaeda ideologue, if you will, in New York in a couple of months. We saw Abu Salman Abu Ghaith, who was the al-Qaeda spokesman, held accountable and ultimately convicted in New York. Now you have the trial of Abu Hamza al-Masri, of a signature terrorist, an ideologue who's known principally because he's missing an eye and his arms, sometimes known as the pirate terrorist because he looks like it. And so it's an interesting case, he's an interesting figure, and yet another ideologue facing charges.
Now, these are not yet the norm. These are still unusual cases. But isn't the administration here trying to make a point that we can take these accused terrorists, try them in our court system, justice will prevail, and we can do that if we have to?
Yeah, that's what they did with Suleiman Abu Ghaith. They've tried that with other cases. The Warsami case, which was the individual caught sort of ferrying between al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and al-Shabaab. They're trying to demonstrate, look, you can get intelligence from these figures, but you can also hold them accountable in Article 3 federal criminal court.
They're building a track record.
That's right.
Yeah.
That said, keep in mind, the federal criminal indictment came out of the Bush administration, right? So there was not a different divide. There wasn't a plan to put Abu Hamza in Guantanamo or into the military commission context. He was already being looked at from a federal criminal perspective. I actually remember him from my days at the Department of Justice in the late 90s when we were looking at the training camp case in Oregon where his name came up. And this was in the late 90s. And I was at the Department of Justice. We were looking at it from a federal criminal prosecutorial perspective. And frankly, it was the only way you're going to get somebody who lives in London extradited. Even though he's Egyptian, right, he lives in London to get him extradited. And that took a long time unto itself.
The one thing that I'm curious about, can the administration demonstrate enough success over a period of time that they can change minds in Congress about the idea of, let's get these Guantanamo guys out of the military system? The tribunal system hasn't worked very effectively or efficiently. And why not give us a crack again? Eric Holder wanted to do that.
Yeah, I think they may be trying to do that. And what's interesting here, we've talked about this, these cases are kind of happening under the radar. And to the extent that they can happen under the radar without much pomp and circumstance, certainly there's drama to it. You have Abu Hamza now testifying, so this is potentially dramatic testimony. But overall, it looks like a common criminal trial, and you can hold these people liable, and they're going to go to jail for a long time. And I think that contributes to the argument that you can use the federal criminal system to hold terrorists to account. What they have not answered yet, though, Bob, and we've talked about this at length for years, what do you do if you put somebody like a Khalid Sheikh Mohammed into the federal criminal system and either you're not able to convict him or something goes wrong? You're going to hold him still. And right, do you ultimately do damage to the credibility of the U.S. federal criminal system by dumping terrorists that you know you're not going to let go anyway into that system? And I think that's a key sort of fundamental legal challenge, but also a political issue.
It's an interesting one. I know that the Obama Justice Department would like very much to try those cases on U.S. soil and be done with Guantanamo. Congress is not yet persuaded.
Yeah, Congress isn't persuaded, and the argument that these guys, especially Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, should be treated as common criminals and given the rights of criminal defendants has not won the day. And I don't think it's going to win the day, but you're right that these trials are demonstrating you can use the federal criminal system to some effect, and you can do it without much drama or fanfare.
Very interesting. Juan, thanks as always.
Thank you, Bob.
And thanks to you for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We will see you next time.